So what in the name of hell is recovery ice cream? Well, it's ice cream to recover with. Duh. That's the end of the video. My name is Sarah. I hope you are all having a beautiful day. I know I am. You are joining me here on one of my favorite activities, not only riding a bike, but doing so in this beautiful autumn season here in Western New York. The trees are turning beautiful shades of gold and red. Still a little green left, but there's nothing better to me than riding this time of year. I love the late spring and summer, the perpetual sun, the long days, the warm temperate weather, not being encumbered by long sleeves and long bibs. Absolutely. But there's something about the cool, crisp air, the quiet roads, the quiet rustle of the leaves, the traffic that is much subdued, lack of hustle and bustle to those summer activities, and of course the colors, all the beautiful colors. It makes fall riding in this area second to none. Living in this area of the Northeast, especially here in the snow belt, can be definitely tough. Sometimes our winters, the winter weather lasts for 6 months at a time, and it can be grating. But on the other hand, we're one of the few areas of the world that experiences all the seasons in that kind of stereotypical way. The cool, crisp fall, the winter with snow, which can be very pretty, although it gets a little annoying after several months. The springs, wet as the trees and the leaves start to bud. And of course, our beautiful temperate summers. I didn't wear sunglasses today because I just wanted to absorb the leaves and trees for what they truly are. We had a lot of rain the last week or so it's been tough to get out and really enjoy this, just come out to enjoy the scenery. This is a very small window of time where things are really this pretty, from about maybe the last week of September to the last week of October, and the leaves change quickly. We go from maybe green with a tinge of yellow on something like the 25th of September, that by the 2nd or 3rd of October, it's like a rainbow of colors. Is a little bit breezy today, but it's not too bad. The objective of this ride is to spin out the legs after a hard gym session yesterday and just enjoy the scenery. Just rest, recover, relax from not just workouts, but the daily stress. You know how it is, 2020 and all that jazz. Hi, friend. Always make new friends on your ride. That's the real social networking right there. It's got a lot going on. So what in the name of hell is recovery ice cream? Well, it's ice cream to recover with. Duh. That's the end of the video. Recovery ice cream may sound a lot like grabbing a pint of ice cream out of the freezer after a hard workout, but in reality, this is going to be a recipe to actually help perform a function for recovery after we break our lean muscle tissue down on a hard workout. Now, this is not particularly unique. You'll see a lot of similar recipes and similar ideas. In fact, this is partially borrowed from the strength world, from weightlifting to CrossFit to bodybuilding. But don't click off, don't walk away just yet, just hear me out. There's a lot of oversubscription to protein. Definitely, you'll see a lot of people talk about needing hundreds and hundreds of grams of protein every single day. That is an absolutely ridiculous allegation, and that's not something that we really want to do.
But as endurance athletes, our needs for protein is substantially higher than it would be if we were just trying to sustain our lives. In fact, the requirements for protein generally are accepted as about 0.35 grams per pound of body weight to sustain life. A good recommendation is about 3/4 of a gram or 0.75 grams per pound of body weight to really sustain good health and wellness. And then for an athlete who has some enhanced needs for protein, that 1-to-1 ratio of 1 gram to 1 pound is pretty good as a rule of thumb to follow. And why is that? Well, we don't want to go catabolic necessarily when we are out on the bike. As much as there's this hyper attention to leanness and losing weight and being lighter on the bike, yes, that's important, but you don't want to lose the lean muscle mass that is going to produce your power. If you want to burn body fat, that's fine, but we often will break down our muscles first. So the purpose of adding in some extra protein is to prevent that. And that is a really important part of your recovery repertoire. So that's where this recipe is going to really come in handy. I'm going to start with the recipe first and then come circle back around to some use cases so that we can just get right into it for those people who are just here for the recipe. So you're not going to need a whole lot of stuff for this. You're going to need just a handful of ingredients and then a blender. I recommend a high-speed or high-powered blender. It's just going to make this a lot faster. You're breaking down some frozen items here, so if you have something, I have a Vitamix here with the tamper. You can also use a Ninja with something like a spatula to push down the sides. You can absolutely use something more simple like a NutriBullet, a food processor, or just a very pedestrian blender from the big box store. I just recommend one of these because it saves you a little bit of time and aggravation, but you can use any blender that you wish. And then you're going to need this handful of ingredients here. All of these ingredients are very readily accessible. In fact, if you live in a large enough city or town, it's very possible that you can find all of these things in one store for the sake of convenience. I source these from a couple different areas, and if there's things that you can't get in your local store, all of these ingredients can be found either in the store or online, often with free shipping. So we'll go through them one by one and talk about that and some alternatives here. And I'll go through the calories and macros for each. But it may come as no surprise that the main ingredient is a protein powder. Yes, we talked a lot about protein, right? So we're gonna use a protein powder, and the most important part of selecting a protein powder is the flavor. This is made into an ice cream because we want it to taste good and be satisfying. So you don't want to pick something that tastes like crap or like chalk. I would recommend picking something that's more decadent or rich flavor, like a chocolate, peanut butter, vanilla, birthday cake, as opposed to something fruity. I think it just lends itself better to this being an ice cream and to the flavor mixtures here. But you can absolutely play with this and pick whatever protein powder that you want. I use this peanut butter cookie protein by BPN. I like the BPN products, not sponsored by the way, even though that'd be really cool because I like their stuff. They do a great job with the flavors. So I particularly like this brand of protein powder over some of the others. And I use a vegan protein only because I'm plant-based in particular. You can use any type of protein that you want. In fact, if you use a whey protein or an isolate, something with casein in it, it's just going to make the recipe even creamier. So you pick what protein powder that you want, make sure you like the flavor. We'll talk about the macros a little bit. This particular protein has 130 calories in it. It's going to have 3.5 grams of fat. It is going to have 3 grams of total carbohydrates and 22 grams of protein. So a pretty strong protein source here. The whey tends to be a little bit higher in protein, sometimes a little higher in calories, but you're gonna be somewhere in this neighborhood here. And then usually you can get a protein somewhere between probably about $30 to up to maybe $65 or $70, depending on where you got it from. This one tends to land right in the middle. I think this is about $40, and you'll get about 30 servings out of this, and you use 1 serving to make the recipe. The next thing you're going to need here is PB2. You can use the PB2 with chocolate as well. It's just a matter of personal preference. I believe the macros are the same for both. Don't quote me on that. I just use the standard PB2 here. I really like the taste of peanut butter, but I've never been a huge fan of peanut butter on its own. I actually don't like the heaviness and the thickness of the peanut butter. I don't like things that are super oily or fatty. That's just personal preference, but I do like the flavor. So this is a really great compromise to that. And it's also great with use for recipes where you want to keep the calories and the fat a lot lower. So for this, you're going to have, for a single serving, which is 2 tablespoons, which is a pretty good amount of peanut butter, to be honest with you. It's 60 calories. You're going to have 1.5 grams of fat, You're going to have 5 grams of total carbohydrates, and you're going to have an additional 6 grams of protein. You can usually find this anywhere between, for this large, this is a 16 ounce or a 1 pound vessel here. You can find this anywhere between $6 and $10 depending on where you find it from. I can usually find this in a grocery store, no problem, but if you can't find it in your local grocery store, you can certainly find that at a number of online retailers, including Amazon with free Prime shipping. The next thing you are going to want here is this xanthan gum. You can also use something called Guar gum. These are just basically binders. You will often find that in the list of ingredients on something like a protein powder. This is really just going to help take the ingredients and homogenize them and really blend them so that they're nice and creamy. If you don't use this, that's okay, but it tends to be more like a smoothie, a little bit more icy. You can tell the difference a little bit by looking at it and just in texture, so I really recommend picking this up. This you may have a hard time finding in a local store, but you can pick this up on Amazon. It costs about $10, but you use very small servings of this, no more than a half a teaspoon for an entire one of these ice cream recipes, and it comes with 150, I believe, servings of this, so it's really pretty cheap if you really think about it. This might last you about a half a year. This is, I think, an 8 ounce bag for $10. You really can't beat that with free Prime shipping. It's not a must, but it really does make the experience a little bit better with the ice cream. In terms of calories and macros, really not much to speak of, about 5 calories and no discernible macros there. The next thing you're going to need is a milk. You can use whatever milk that you really like. I would recommend a nut milk. They tend to be a little bit thicker and creamier, and it's less of a caloric cost to you. I like this creamy cashew milk by Silk. It really does make it really creamy. And for a full cup, which I generally don't even use, is only 25 calories. So it really is going to keep the calories low on this. You can certainly use a dairy milk and get a protein boost out of it. You can use a full fat dairy milk and get more creaminess out of it, but you are going to add the calories. I believe a cup of dairy milk is somewhere around 110 calories. So it's just your own personal preference. So if you're going to make that replacement, just be cognizant of that if you're counting macros and calories. In terms of fat, you're going to have 2 grams here. You're going to have total carbohydrates is 1 gram and protein is about 1 gram. So not a whole lot in terms of macros here, mostly just focusing on creating the liquid to blend and adding that creaminess factor. The last 2 things you're going to need are your frozen items. First, you're going to need a cup of any kind of frozen fruit, really, if you want to use it. I would recommend a berry or a banana. They tend to be a little mild in flavor, as opposed to something like a tropical fruit like a pineapple. This is 140 grams of strawberries, which is 40 calories, no fat, no discernible protein, and then you're going to get about 14 grams of carbohydrates. This seems to be the least overbearing in terms of flavors, so just very subtle hint of flavor there. Bananas as well, they're higher in calorie, but they do make it extra creamy. When you move into your darker berries like blueberries, raspberries, things like that, they steal a show in terms of flavor, but that can be very good. I've made a really good version of this that is like blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, just a berry blend with the chocolate protein and peanut butter, and it's just a completely different flavor profile, and it's very good. And the last thing you're going to need is some ice. For me, I typically fill these blender bottles up to about 3/4 of the way. This is going to be the volume making mechanism, if you will, for your recipe. If you add more ice, you're just going to create a larger bowl of ice cream for yourself. Obviously, there's a threshold to which you may end up having to add more milk or adding more of the powders to balance the texture and balance the flavor, but this is 0 calories. 0 macros, so this really just adds volume to your ice cream, and you can play with that within reason. This is really hard to screw up as a recipe. Short of adding way too much of this xanthan gum here, you really are not going to screw this up to the point that you can't recover. If you put too much PB2 in there and it's too peanut buttery, then maybe you add a little extra milk or add a little bit extra ice and you cut the volume a little bit. But you can definitely play around with all the different types of flavors and ratios and things like that to really make this recipe your own. So I'm going to put the recipe together here in the carafe, and then we'll blend it up. This is really fast to make, and in fact, if you really want to work efficiently and save time, you'll notice that I have all my measuring devices inside these dry ingredients here, so it makes it a little bit faster for me. And I typically just eyeball the milk, ice, and strawberries because I'm just so used to making this. But we'll start with the powder. So I put the powders in first. I put them in this particular order because it tends to make it blend just a little bit faster as opposed to putting the frozen ingredients in the bottom. So we will grab here a scoop, 1 serving of the protein powder. Cap that off. We'll move on to the PB2, which is 2 tablespoons, and I've got a spare tablespoon just kind of lodged in here a little bit, so I'll try to do this without making a mess. I'll kind of scrape that off. You can certainly be more precise with your measurements by using a scale or what have you. I'm just, for the sake of you watching this video, I want to make this as simple as possible, and it really kind of mirrors what I generally do in terms of just putting this together rather quickly. Next thing I do is put the xanthan gum in here. I just have a small 1/3 of a teaspoon, which is less than a particular a standard serving size here, and I will go ahead and just kind of dump that in there. Next, I go to the milk. I typically use about 1/2 cup of milk for the texture I want. If you use a full cup, it generally makes it a little bit closer to a milkshake. I like mine similar to like a Wendy's Frosty, I think, is the best analogy for it. So it's more like a soft serve. You can definitely use even less liquid. As long as you have enough liquid to blend, you can use less liquid to give it a lot more body. It's never going to be like something that you chew, but it will certainly make it a little bit thicker if you use less liquid. I'll dump the frozen ingredients in here. I started to get a little melty sitting here under the lights. Put the ice in there, and then I will put the lid and tamper in there, and we'll blend this up and we'll look at the finished results. Okay, so that took about 90 seconds of blending with some tamping action here. You can kind of see the texture here. Again, something like a Wendy's Frosty. It does hold inside the blender, so it is thick enough to actually eat with a spoon. Again, you can add more milk if you want to make it something you can drink through a straw. But just to kind of show you for the sake of comparison here, you get about 1/3 of a blender, so probably about 1.5 pints of ice cream here. And if you compare that to like a pint of even light ice cream, so this is Halo Top dairy-free ice cream. This is very similar in macros and calories to their full dairy version, but you're gonna have 330 calories in this entire pint, and then your macros aren't even as strong. So I think this is only gonna have, let's see, 12 grams of protein in the entire container here. You're gonna have 15 grams of fat, and you're gonna have 59 grams of carbohydrates. Compare that to approximately 250 calories, about 7 grams of fat. This was 25 grams of carbohydrates and 30 grams of protein. So, I mean, granted, this is probably going to taste a little bit better if you taste them side by side, but this tastes really good. I mean, this is probably about 85% of the way there. So this would certainly satisfy the cravings for sweets or ice creams, and this will just be really enjoyable to eat. So we're going to go ahead and put this in the bowl just so you can kind of see. We'll go ahead and scoop that out. You can eat it right out of the blender too, like no judgment here. Less dishes, right? Less dishes, less water, just eat this crap out of the blender. Don't cut yourself on the blade. But we'll get all this good stuff out of here. That's about good for now. We'll give this a bit of a try here. That is really good, really peanut buttery. You can top this ice cream with whatever you want as well. You can sprinkle a little extra PB2 on top if you want. Use something like a syrup. If you want a low-calorie or zero-calorie syrup to put on top of that as well. You can make this pretty much whatever you want, but that is really good. Well, we'll talk about some use cases for this and how it will fit into your general regime. Let me go ahead and put this in the freezer so it doesn't melt everywhere so I can eat it later, and we'll get right back at it. So if it wasn't clear when I read off the macros, this can really be a versatile recipe. This can fit into pretty much any dietary lifestyle. For me, plant-based, I was able to change the ingredients or use ingredients that were plant-based to fit my needs. You can use this in keto. It's pretty low on carbohydrates, 25 grams total, but you can cut 14 out of that by cutting the fruit. The fruit really is just in there for some of the micronutrients. You can replace that with ice and get a pretty similar flavor profile. Low carb, timed carb, again, that will fit into those lifestyles well. This will generally fit into any diet. And the best use case that I've come up for it is to replace like a post-ride protein or recovery shake. So what I'll typically do is after a hard workout, I will come home and instead of having a recovery shake that I would just shake up in a bottle real quick, I would use a couple of extra minutes and make this into the ice cream. And it meets a couple of different demands. So first of all, because it's ice cold, it'll help lower the core body temperature. I tend to do my workouts after work because I go to work so early. Doing them before work is really difficult. So that puts me closer to bedtime, and I don't want to disrupt my sleep. It's hard enough to get those hormones and endorphins down with only a few hours before bedtime, but what's even more probative to sleep is core body temperature. So eating this cold ice cream helps to immediately lower core body temperature, so it helps prepare you to sleep. So I will eat my protein ice cream or recovery ice cream, and then I will take my shower. After which point I will prepare my primary meal. Now another benefit of eating this right after your workout is that when you go to prepare your primary meal, you will make better choices. And what do I mean by that? If you come off the bike, maybe even a little bit under-fueled, you'll end up being ravenous not long after you are off the bike. And we've all been there where we're super hungry after workout, we get showered, we get in the kitchen, we're trying to prepare our meal, and we're grazing, we're picking at everything, we basically want to eat the house. And this will actually help to start quelling that hunger a little bit. It's telling the brain that it's getting something sweet, it's meeting the demands, even though it's not super high in the sugars. It's telling the brain that you are getting something sugary because of the flavor and the taste of something sweet on your tongue. The volume itself and the protein will also start kind of producing that leptin and start quelching that ghrelin, so you're not feeling as hungry and ravenous. So now when you go make your primary meal, you can focus it more on the healthy carbohydrates to refuel, and you are not making bad choices based out of extreme hunger, and you're less prone to overeat. An interesting fact about the way that we eat is if you really think about how you eat intuitively, many of us will say that we tend to rely a lot on carbs, that we love carbs, we love pastas, we love potatoes and things to that effect. And if we were left to eat intuitively, we would eat a lot of those things. And much of that is based on our developed habits and tastes for those items. But the reason we tend to overeat those things is because the body of mammals and the way that we eat is designed to regulate our protein. So a lot of those foods tend to be lower in protein. So we will overeat them until the body gets the protein demands that it is looking for. This is why you'll find that a lot of protein-laden foods are very satiating, and you won't be hungry as often if you eat these high protein dense foods. So this is a good way to kind of not overeat for your primary meal and meet your protein needs without trying to fight against ghrelin. This can also just be introduced into your general lifestyle, especially if you're trying to manage body composition, manage caloric input, or just run a calorie deficit. This is a great way to introduce a good treat or even cheat food into your diet without killing your calories for the day, and really make you feel satisfied, to really help things mentally, especially if you're trying to run a deficit and trying to get leaner. This is a great way to preserve that muscle and to not break the bank on calories, so that you can continue to aspire and work towards your ideal body composition. Another very strong use case scenario, and I think most of us can relate to this, but especially plant-based athletes, is just the ability to get in the amount of protein that you need in a time-starved lifestyle. A lot of us have demanding jobs or family lives, maybe you have kids. We have a lot of things demanding our time, plus our training, plus any kind of recovery that we are doing. It's sometimes tough to get what we need nutritionally speaking. We tend to rely a lot on convenience. Ideally, we'd have some personal chef that's perfectly cultivating all of our whole food meals that are perfectly balanced in terms of our macronutrient profile, gives us enough protein that we need to get through the day. But the reality is most of us are relying on ourselves to do those things. And we are looking for things that are easy and quick to eat, and sometimes those aren't protein sources. So while if you're eating enough calories, you can usually get enough protein to meet your daily demands, to be a healthy and well individual in general, you might not be getting that extra little bit to help recover from the demands you're putting on your body. So this is a great way to get a boost in a way that you enjoy. So you could just make it part of your daily routine. That's 30 grams plus of protein right off the bat, or to round out your day to meet your macros. It's very hard to find something that's going to have just 30 grams of protein in it. Even meat sources, this is a great way to get a boost. And if you really like sweet foods, this is an awesome choice. This is something I started introducing in my own nutritional regimen about a month ago, and I really do enjoy it. I find myself enjoying eating it. I feel very satisfied afterwards, and I've noticed that my patterns of eating are a lot more stable. If I eat one of these recovery ice cream recipes after a workout, I don't feel ravenous the next day. Sometimes when I do a very hard workout and I'm a little bit under-fueled, even if I feel satisfied and I'm not restricting my calories and I'm eating until I'm full, the next afternoon it's like I just want to eat everything. I want empty carbohydrate sources like chips or pretzels or something that I can grab quick at work. This seems to quell that a little bit. It seems to be, I'm giving the body more of what it needs, what it's asking for after I've broken it down a little bit. But this is so versatile. This can fit into pretty much anybody's regimen, as I mentioned. I hope that this is something that you can use. In fact, I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments below how you would change this recipe and make it your own. What kind of protein would you use? What kind of PB2 would you use? How much would you use? What kind of milk would you use? What kind of fruit did you use? Try this out and let me know how you've tweaked this and made it your own, because I guarantee you there is a version of this recipe for everybody out there. It is a great source of protein, a great recovery tool, and I highly recommend you give it a try. But as always, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching, and I thank you for making it to the end of the video. I'm going to be shameless like all of us little YouTube creators are out there, and please, please, please hit that thumbs up button down below. I know, it's shameless, but it really does help the channel out quite a bit, and it also helps other people like you on YouTube find videos that might have value to them by pushing us up just a little bit in the algorithm. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I make a new video. Share this with a friend if you think that they'd be into it. And again, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.